me. You're texting. I would like to introduce to you a special person. Jim Mitchell was going to come. Jim can't come, and we were lucky enough to have Sarah. Sarah is a member of your team, of our team, of the U.S. national team. And she's come to talk to you about that. Now, I will say this. You coach her. I coach her. And I've known you since 12, when you rolled in at lunch, and that's as long. But as soon as I went up to talk to her, I've known her for years and years, and I would say that you probably have too, meaning that you have kids, maybe even you're one of those, but you have kids that are just like her. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Trowbridge. I was part of the 2010 Women's Quad that raced in New Zealand. I've actually been in the 2010 Women's Quad, 2009 Quad. In 2008, I was in the non-Olympic 4. In 2007, I went to Pan American Games in the Women's Quad and double. So I'm a 4-time national team member, and I'm training towards 2012 for the Olympics. That's my goal. I actually also have coached a bit. After I graduated from University of Michigan, I coached a little bit there, and then in DC area at Bishop O'Connell and Thompson's Boat Club, and then coached at Georgetown for their lightweight women novices for 2 years. So I've done a little bit of coaching also. And I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of my getting into rowing when I was in high school and kind of working through the ranks. And so I started rowing my senior year, like the summer before my senior year. My mom dragged me kicking and screaming because we didn't have a club in Guilford, Connecticut, so I had to go to Old Lyme High School up in Old Lyme, Connecticut, and row with them. And actually, that year was sort of, I basically had 1 year, and I had one high school coach, and I went through that novice stage. And that was pretty much the peak, the highlight of my erging. That was the only time I was the greatest person on the erg. We knew we were going to do a 2K. We don't really have a lot of ergs there. I thought I should probably go to the gym like the day before and try it. So I went to the gym, and I set the thing for 2,000 meters, and I looked at my watch, and I was like, okay, go. And I went as hard as I could, and I looked, and I was like, yeah, that was like 8 or 9 minutes. Oh, shoot, I forgot. I'm not sure where it was. Like, I didn't even know how to set the monitor. And I went, and we pulled our first 2K, and I really wanted to beat this girl, and she kept talking about 8 minutes, and it was really important. She was probably like a sophomore, junior, and I'm a senior, so I'm already older, but, and I went like 7:58 or something. She started crying, and that was, I was done. I was like, yes, this is for me. I did everything under the sun. I kayaked, sailed, skied, pole vaulted, dove, did hurdles, was in the circus for a little bit. I tried everything. I was always very athletic, very strong, and always coaches were telling me raw talent, raw potential. She's so strong, she's so athletic, but I never quite found the sport for me until I came to rowing. And so that high school was great. I mean, for that 1 year, I was like big on the erg. I got down to 7:29, and eventually went to Michigan. I'm not quite sure how I got to Michigan with 7:29, but I did. And when I was in college, and since for the next 8 or 9 years that I've been rowing since high school, I've always kind of been at the bottom of the top group. So I started out, I had to row in the novice boat at Michigan, and then 2V, and 2V, and then 1V. And then post-college, I've been slowly working up. And I think that it's going to be a lot about how you can reach out to these kids, especially ones that you're not sure if they're going to be great. How do you get them to buy in? Or how do you inspire them to keep going? Or how do you get the best out of them? Because I think, although I've always gotten along with most of my coaches and had great relationships, and they were very important to me, especially those 4 years in college, because that was the majority of my rowing, I think a lot of it was the times that I didn't necessarily perform as well, or for most of my career, was misunderstanding. I think I'm the best rower in the United States of America. My coaches misunderstand this. Like, I'm almost positive, but I don't know how to express it all the time. And I think, like my novice year at Michigan, it was a little rough. I didn't understand that I had to be at practice in the morning. I'm not sure I'd understood there was practice sometimes. And I look back as always being very driven, but I didn't always know how to express that. I didn't know always how. I don't think my coaches always knew how to reach me, and kind of going up through these ranks. And I remember thinking, maybe I should have, I was only there actually one semester my freshman year, and I said, maybe I should have redshirted. And my coach at Michigan was like, I know, we really should have redshirted you, because I was doing well my senior year, and she's like, but we didn't think we actually wanted you to keep coming. So we didn't keep redshirting you. I was like, But it was always about like how, learning with my coaches, like how to reach. I thought it was so clear that I wanted to be the best, but I didn't know how to do that at all, all the time, going through the little bit of end of high school and through college. And I think it was about, like, when you have that kid that maybe is riding the line between could be great and just average, is figuring out these different channels and communicating with them to kind of pull them up into that next level. I definitely think going through my post-college rowing, I went to Potomac Boat Club because I never had a huge erg, so I wasn't necessarily a first recruit for the national team. I think leaving college I had a 709, and so you basically went to a club system. So I went and I started sculling at Potomac Boat Club, and it's actually out of Potomac that I made my first team with the Pan American Games, which isn't necessarily a priority team. It's not the World Championship team, but it was my first way to do it, and I had to do it by moving the boat and winning the race, and not necessarily with my erg. And then I still wasn't necessarily up in Princeton railing with the national team, and I made the 4 the next year for non-Olympic Worlds. And then after that, some miscommunication with the national team coaches, which I won, and I ended up in Princeton. I was like, oh, you wanted me here, right? I can come? They were like, no, we did not want you here, but you're here. And luckily, it's worked out, and this is my 3rd year in Princeton with the national team, and it's still about, like, how can I get the best out of myself? How can I work with my coaches, and how can I keep developing on this training plan and getting just more out of myself? Now I'm getting up there in years compared to some of these kids that are coming right out of college, but I still think I have plenty of seconds to gain, and working on that training plan, and like I said, still getting a little bit more out of your athletes, figuring out what makes them tick. So that's sort of my thoughts on my time through the national team. I know I'm supposed to stick with one point. I was given that advice, but I actually wanted to divide it up a little bit because Fred spoke earlier about the conditions in New Zealand. So I'm totally going to switch topics and go to 2010 Worlds. I was in the women's quad, and I was in the women's quad last year too. We came in second. We got a silver medal, which is the best the United States has ever done in that event since it moved from the coxed quad to the regular quad. So we did something that had not been done before. We were 4 kids that were maybe not what people guessed that's what we would do. We weren't necessarily very big or huge ergs, and the quad can be a very powerful, fast boat. So we did something great. It was an awesome year. Lots of ups and downs, but luckily ended on a high note. 2010, we get to the championship. We have a very strong boat. Things are looking good. And we enter this regatta that it's incredibly windy. The conditions change all the time. Like Fred showed, there was days that were totally flat and calm, and then there were days that were totally windy, terrible conditions. And I would consider myself a more technical, like, boat feel person. And so I love wind, but I'm also very strong. So I love wind. I think this is great. We can just, like, this is where we kill people off the start. We just power through it. You just row clean, take it up and over. So racing, actually, we launch on Sunday. We're warming up. This water is horrible. And we're about to pull into the gates, and they cancel the race. So it's getting pushed back. And we're like, oh my gosh, like, talk about build up and let down. Next day, go through this all again. It's Monday, get into the blocks. We go off the line. We're not doing that hot. We're like somewhere right in the middle, 150 strokes in. I catch the first crab of my life. Like in a race, first crab. It wasn't even the like, down into the water. It was the oar coming up, the blade coming up to the thing, the handle flying over the girl in front of me. I was like, oh, this is not good. I'm like shimmying it down, back into place, and then we just took off. We went from last back into third. So not enough to move directly to the final. That was the first definitely the first crab in my life. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely shocked. And our coach actually said something interesting. She said, I got off the water and I was like, well, she'll either understand that, that shit happens, or I'll be in trouble. And she kind of gave us this look, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm in trouble. And she was like, you guys are lucky that this happened. You're lucky you caught a crab, because you were rowing like crap before then. And that crab pulled you together and made you start racing. You stopped worrying and you started racing. And that was very true. That was very important. So next race, it's the semis. It's really nice conditions. We go out and we have a beautiful race. I mean, great right off the line. We are so smooth. It was beautiful. We crushed Germany, who had done really well in their heats. I think they were second. And I mean, we just adored them. It was a beautiful race, finished off well. We are excited. We're really looking forward to the final. We are getting pumped up. We feel like we are still a little bit of underdogs. Things are going well. We get to our final, and we launch, and this water is horrible. The conditions were awful. Probably worse than I'd ever raced in my life. I mean, worse than Rio, which had gotten really bad. And we're out there, and I'm like, it's okay, like, we've already worked through this. We've already gone through this. Everyone's going to be so nervous. And you could feel the tensions really picking up. And you could feel my boat getting, starting to fixate a little bit. And we're like, okay, but it's okay. We're thinking about staying clean. We've been working little technique changes. This is going to, this is our chance. This will just throw everyone else off, and we'll work through it. It did not work out very well for us. We ended up coming in fifth. We rode pretty poorly, and the conditions definitely got the best of us. I think that something that we had to come away from was that we fixated a lot on rowing well in bad water, and we forgot to fixate on racing, which is something we'd made that change in the heat when we caught the crab. We just threw everything out the window and started racing. And I think that in the final, we thought so much about this rough water that we stopped racing. That it wasn't as much about racing, it was about nerves, it was about not catching a crab. I'm a pretty confident person, so I sat there going, well,